Welcome to part 2 of my video on iron farm mechanics in Minecraft Bedrock Edition. If you have not seen part 1, I highly recommend you watch that video first and then come back to this one. In this video, I will show you how to accurately calculate iron farm production rates while taking into account killing times and the number of villagers in a village. Running an iron farm for, say, 10,000 hours in Minecraft is rather prohibitive. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to simulate it. So I'm going to build a simulation based on iron farm mechanics. So using these mechanics, I developed a simulation in R. R is a statistical programming language that I use heavily in my research. I teach R. I use R in Minecraft. I have a library for playing with Minecraft data in R. If you want to know more about that, you can join my Discord. This simulation is written in R, and it has several parameters. So we're going to have the number of ticks that we're going to run the simulation for. So this is 72,000. So we're going to run the simulation for an hour. We then have the number of blocks in our platform. So we're going to use 512 blocks. This is a max platform. We then have a parameter for how long a golem lives. So we're going to let every golem live for 310 ticks. This is 15.5 seconds. So it's going to spawn, exist for 310 seconds, and then die. And then the last parameter that we have is the size of the population. So this is 20. So our simulation is going to support at most 2 golems at once. So after that, we calculate our spawning efficiency using our calculation. We're going to calculate our cap, and then we are going to draw some random numbers. So for every single tick, we're going to draw a random number to see if it's going to spawn a golem in that tick or not. Independently of this, we're actually going to also draw a random number to see if on that tick it found the right spawn block. It found a spawnable block. Now together, we can combine these two things to figure out on which ticks will it try to spawn a golem. The rest of this algorithm is for handling the cap. So it's going to check whenever a golem potentially could spawn if there are too many golems already in the farm. So this says 20 villagers, the cap is 2. So if there are already 2 golems in the farm, then the next golem won't spawn. This takes into account the golem age and how long they live. The very last part here is simulating the loot drop from an iron. So when our golem dies, it can drop 3, 4, or 5 ingots. So I go ahead and simulate that as well. And then the total output here is the sum of all the iron that drops. I ran the simulation 100,000 times, and I've plotted the results in this histogram. The x-axis represents the amount of iron collected in 1 hour, and the y-axis the amount of times that was seen. The dashed line is the expectation for a maxed farm. And you can see that because we have 20 villagers in a farm and golems take 310 ticks to die, we are losing about 20 iron per hour. But what's more important to note is how much variation there is per hour in iron farm production. It's not rare to get fewer than 350 iron or even greater than 450 iron. This is why a single hour of testing does not give you accurate estimates of a farm's rates. And if you want accurate estimates, you're going to have to run the farm in-game for several hours. We can look at an iron farm a different way instead of measuring the number of ingots produced. What we can do is we can actually look at it as a random walk. So here in this figure, I have on the x-axis time in minutes. So we went for 30 seconds, for 30 minutes of a farm. And so the x-axis plots the number of golems. So we can have 0, 1, 2, or 3 golems in this farm. And so what the sort of path does is whenever a golem spawns, like here, it's going to move up from 0 to 1. And then it's going to live a bit, and then it's going to move back down to 0, from 1 to 0. Sometimes, say over in here, you are going to have a iron golem that spawns when an iron golem already is in the farm. And so it'll go from 0 to 1, and then from 1 to 2, and then back down as the golems die. So in this plot, I've shown, I show a couple different things. So I have a line for attempts. So this is when the 1 out of 700 test is satisfied. So these are times in which the golem could have spawned. The blue line is when the cap wasn't exceeded. So these are cases in which you had an attempt and you were not already capped. And then the blue line is when you have the actual golem spawning event. So you can see like where you're losing potential golems. So for instance, here we had a golem spawning attempt that was made, but it wasn't successful because we were already capped in the village. Conversely, here in this blue line, you can see where we had an attempt that was made, but it did not find a spawning spot. Before, we actually calculated that the maximum rate of an iron farm was about 404 ingots. That is only if we never have a capping issue, that we always have more villagers than we have golems. So in order to truly calculate the rate of farm, we actually have to consider the fraction of time that farm spends with the maximum number of golems. So this equation, I would like to acknowledge Golden Helmet, who on my Discord came up with this equation, pointed it out to me. And so in it, we have a parameter that I'm going to use G. So this is the rate per tick of a golem spawning, and this includes both the 1 out of 700 rate at which attempts are made and the platform efficiency. That rate of spawning is then adjusted downward by the fraction of time that the farm spends with the maximum number of golems, because whenever the farm is in the maximum number of golem state, it cannot spawn golems. In order to calculate the number of ticks that a farm spends with the maximum number of golems, we're going to model the farm as a Markov model. Specifically, we are going to track the number of golems alive in a farm each tick. This could be 0, 1, 2, up to n golems. In this model, how many golems that a farm has at time t is going to depend on how many golems it has at time t minus 1. This property is what makes it a Markov model. So the 0 state, that's going to represent the state that the farm has 0 golems. 1 is the farm has 1 golem. 2, farm has 2 golems. N, farm has n golems. And so this is a per tick. So every tick, there is a chance for a golem to spawn. So 0 can go to 1 with the rate of G. 1 can go to 2 with the rate of G, and on and on. So the actual maximum state a farm can be in is based on the number of villagers. And that may be 1, that may be 2, that may be some n. So I've represented it here as something greater than n. So every time you go up, farm goes up, the rate of that is G. Now, the rate of a golem dying, so this is, say, taking the farm down from 1 to 0, is going to be K. Of course, if you have 2 golems, that rate's going to be 2K. If you have n golems, that rate's going to be NK. So we can take this model and we can actually analyze it. We can actually calculate, based on this model, what is the fraction of time the farm is in state N. Based on this model, we can define the probability that the farm is in state I at time t based on recursion equations, probability that the farm is in state 0 at time t plus 1, that's going to equal to the probability that the farm is in state 0 and it did not gain a golem, plus the probability that the farm was in state 1 at time t and a golem died. The probability that the farm is in state 1 at time t plus 1, that's going to equal to the probability that the farm was in state 0 at the previous time and a golem birthed, was gained by the farm. And it's going to be the probability the farm is in state I, is in state 1 at time t, and it did not either lose or gain a golem. And then the probability that the farm is in state 2 at time t and a golem died. That's going to give us the probability at time t plus 1 that the farm is in state 1. At the very end, the probability it's in state n, that's going to equal to g times the probability of farm was in p n minus 1, so it gained a golem, and the probability that if it's in state n that it did not lose a golem. We can take these recursion equations. We can solve them for the farm being in stationarity. By stationarity, we mean that the probability that the farm is in state I at t plus 1 is the same as the probability it is in state t. So running the farm any longer isn't going to sort of change the probability that the farm is in a state. We're going to define the values of p at stationarity as p bar. For this to be the case in this model, the flux between two adjacent states has to be the same. The probability of going from 0 to 1 has to be the same as the probability of going from 1 to 2 at stationarity. The rate of a golem spawning times p bar I minus 1 is going to have to equal to the rate at which an iron dies times p I bar. At stationarity, we have n plus 1 values, and we have n rates, transitions between nodes. We have a final constraint of that all the p's must sum to 1. So we have n plus 1 values and n plus 1 unknowns, and so with that we can use algebra to solve everything and to figure out what our equations for pi are at stationarity, given a known g and k. Consider an iron farm of 10 villagers. So the maximum number of golems that it can support is 1. So based on this, our equations become g times p naught is equal to k times p1, and p naught plus p1 is equal to 1. So those are our constraints. So we can take this and we can solve it for p naught and p1, and we get the equation for the probability that the farm is capped is 1 over 1 plus k over g. This is the fraction of time that if the farm tried to spawn a golem, that would fail. Now let's define f of m as the fraction of time that an iron farm is in state m when it can only support at most m golems. So this is the fraction of time the farm is capped, that it will not spawn golems because it's already at the maximum. We can calculate f of m based on our previous logic, and this is the probability that the farm is in state n when that is the most number of golems the farm can support. So as we calculated before, for f of 1, the probability is 1 over 1 plus kg. F of 2 looks like this. F of 3, you can calculate it by hand. I've done that, looks like this. And so when you put this all together, you can actually solve it analytically. And what you see that for any number of m, this is the equation for the probability that the farm is capped. So it's 1 over the sum from 0 to m of m factorial over m minus x factorial raised times k over g to the x. So that is the equation. You want to calculate it on your own. That explains the probability that a farm is capped based on the number of villagers in your farm, the rate at which you're killing iron golems, and the rate at which they're spawning. As discussed earlier, we can take the rate at which the farm is capped, we can put it into a master equation that measures how much iron a farm is going to produce per hour. So this is the equation that you can use to calculate the rate of spawning, the rate of iron production of your farm based on the number of blocks that are spawnable in your farm and the maximum number of golems your farm supports, and K, the rate at which you're killing them. Taking this equation, we can plot it to visualize what it looks like. This figure, I have on the x-axis the platform size in blocks. On the y-axis, we have iron per hour production, and I have a set of 4 lines going up, and these 4 lines represent the rate at which you'd get based on 10, 20, 30, or 40 villagers in your farm. So this is your iron production per hour. So what you can see is that with 10 villagers, you get close to 300 iron per hour with a large platform. You go up to 20 villagers, you gain roughly about 90 to 100 iron. And at 30 and 40, there's a very small difference. And so this is all based on a kill time of 15 seconds. So another way to look at this is efficiency. So how many iron do you get per villager in your farm? This is the same as before, except now I have, on the y-axis, I'm doing iron per hour per villager. You see is that per villager, a 10 villager farm is more efficient than any other farm. So per villager, you can get nearly 30 iron per hour. You have 10 villagers in the farm. 20 villagers, you're getting close to 20 iron per hour per villager. As you go up to 30 or 40 villagers, trying to get that last little bit of iron out of your farm per hour, you're really losing a lot of efficiency per villager. So more villagers add more lag. They add more sort of annoyance. Makes it harder to put more beds in it. And really is that, you're going to get, you have 40 villagers, you're going to actually get more iron by building 4 farms with those villagers. Because within a single chunk, you can actually fit 2 iron farms within a chunk, one very high and one very low. And so even if you have only 20 villagers, you can put 10 in one and 10 in the other. And that's going to make more iron than if you put 20 in one farm. Actually, the most efficient farm is to use 10 villagers in a farm. Now you may not, since you're already using 20 beds, you may want to add 20 villagers, and that actually makes a lot of sense. You're losing a little bit of efficiency, but you are gaining a lot of iron for doing that. So I would say that if I was building a farm, I'd either go with 10 or maybe 20 villagers. Let's ignore that advice. Say we're willing to put up to 60 villagers in a single iron farm. How many do we actually need to get to a certain level of iron? So let's say we are aiming for a 99% efficient iron farm. That's roughly about 400 iron per hour. And we wanted to know, based on platform size and kill time of our golems, how many villagers do we need to get a 99% efficient iron farm? In this case, so I've marked 2 values on this. 15 seconds, that's roughly the time it takes for a lava blade to get rid of iron golems, and an impaling 5 trident killer. That's about 10 seconds. although the trident killer itself is pretty fast, the time it takes for the golem to enter the killer adds some more time. So my measurements, a lava blade is about 15 seconds, and an impaling trident killer is about 10 seconds. So if you were using a lava blade and you wanted 400 iron per hour, you could use either 30 or 40 villagers to produce it, depending on your platform size. So if you used 490 blocks in a lava blade, you would need something on the order of 40 villagers to get that. If you used a max platform, you could get away with 30 to get up to 400 iron per hour. Of course, as your golem kill time increases, so you go with slower techniques, you're going to need more villagers in your farm to prevent capping. So the slower you kill golems, the more likely the farm is to cap. And so you need more villagers to offset that if you want the same levels of production. Just stepping down a bit, we wanted to look at 95% efficient iron farms. We don't need as many villagers. So in this case, for lava blade, if we only wanted, say, 384 iron per hour, we only need 30 villagers to do that. But we're getting close with a max platform of being able to get away with about 20 villagers. Other thing to note here is the platform size. That even with a lava blade and a platform size of 400, you're still getting at least 99% efficiency right in here. So that's losing 112 blocks from max. So really sort of trying to squeeze the last little bit out of a farm and going to some sort of weird catchment setup is probably not worth it based on how efficient farms already are at you have enough blocks. If we look at actual numbers attached to different iron farms, we can actually see the difference between single and double platforms and how many villagers you need to actually get the numbers. How to read this table is that I have single platforms over here and double platforms over here. Specifically village size, so whether you have 10, 20, 30, 40, or 50 villagers in your farm, and then whether you have and the number of blocks in your spawn platform. This is based on having a 3x3 chute, a 2x2 chute, and a 1x1 chute in your platform. If you have, say, 510 blocks in your farm and 20 villagers, you're going to get 380. Now, if you went up to 50 villagers, you can start getting almost maxed out at 404 iron. But of course, if you took all these villagers and you made more farms with them, you can actually get more total iron. You can fit 4 iron farms in Simulation Distance 4 without doing any sort of fancy village stacking. And so if you have 40 villagers, you can build, you can easily build 4 single platform farms, and you can make about 1,000 iron per hour. That way, if you wanted to go to a double platform, you'll get on the order of 100 more iron. So that's 1,100 iron per hour if you did a double platform with 10 villagers. If you went to 20 villagers in these farms and a double platform, you would get 380 per farm times 4. That's about 1,500 per hour from 4 farms, using 20 villagers each in those 4 farms. So with that, I'd like to thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. If you want to sort of know more about stuff like this, feel free to join my Discord. We do a lot there about code digging and figuring out mechanics and how to utilize the mechanics to make important farms and how to use tools to analyze your world. And I would also like to see if anyone has any ideas on other discussion videos I should do like this. Please put them in the comments.